Hello again everybody. I'm moving away from Roman emperors today and moving on to thinking about Greek stuff. So we're going on to the Greek tragedy writer Sophocles and specifically the play Antigone, written in sort of mid to late 5th century BC, one of the most important times in the history of Athens. And although it's an ancient play, it's a very contemporary play, as you will see. It was written in the second part of the 5th century BC, a time of huge development for Athens in terms of politics and its economy and the arts and philosophy and pretty much anything really that mattered. That was going on in Athens at that time. And the play Antigone was very much part of that. It was one of the plays produced in the Theatre of Dionysus, part of a dramatic competition every year. But it's a fundamental play because it raises some fundamental issues. A modern scholar has suggested that tragedy was a way of society thinking aloud about its problems and its issues, and I shall come back to that notion in a little while. So, what's the story of Antigone? Before the play takes place, there had been a civil war over who was going to be the king of Thebes. Two brothers had fought. These were Polynices and Eteocles, sons of Oedipus, and that's a whole other talk which we might come to at some point. But they had died in a duel. Both had killed the other. So one of them was fighting for Thebes and one of them was fighting to take over the kingship of Thebes. So one of the issues of the play is what we do about patriotism and honour and civil war, how we think about that. Anyway, Creon has become the king and he has issued an edict that one of the brothers, Eteocles, who was fighting for Thebes, he's going to be given a full state funeral with military honours, and Polynices, who was fighting against his brother, his body was going to be left out on the plains for the dogs to eat and for carrion birds to eat. And so his soul would not be able to go to the underworld because his body was going to remain unburied. This raises the question of the law that Creon has issued, his edict, which is that body should be unburied, which goes fundamentally against the law of the gods. Now I've got a few short readings from the play, and here's the first of them. This is Antigone speaking. This Antigone is the sister of Polynices and Eteocles, and so she's speaking about the law, and she says, "These laws, I was not about to break them, not out of fear of some man's wounded pride and face the retribution of the gods. Die I must, I've known it all my life. How could I keep from knowing? Even without your death sentence ringing in my ears, and if I am to die before my time, I consider that a gain. Who on earth, alive in the midst of so much grief as I, could fail to find his death a rich reward? So for me, at least, to meet this doom of yours, Creon, is precious little pain. But if I had allowed my own mother's son to rot, an unburied corpse, that would have been an agony. This is nothing, and if my present actions strike you as foolish, let's just say I've been accused of folly by a fool." Well, tough words, and she's quite a feisty woman. But it raises the question of whether we should obey the laws of the state or whether we should obey the laws of the gods. And if we were put in a position where we felt that morality was being challenged by the law of the state, how far would we go in being prepared to break the laws of the state? It also raises questions about patriotism and honour and loyalty to the state. Creon has risked offending the gods by putting his law above theirs. But there's also quite a bit in the next scene about gender issues and about the sort of leadership that people might show. And the next bit of reading comes from a speech by Creon. He's actually talking to his son, Haemon, about the nature of leadership. "Anarchy, show me a greater crime in all the earth. She destroys cities. Interesting that anarchy is personified as female. Rips up houses, breaks the ranks of spearmen into headlong rout. But the ones who last it out, the great mass of them owe their lives to discipline. Therefore we must defend the men who live by law. Never let some woman triumph over us. Better to fall from power, if fall we must, at the hands of a man. Never be rated inferior to a woman. Never. Well, clearly Creon has got some issues to do with his gender there and whether he feels comfortable with that. It's quite interesting thinking about leaders in the world today, particularly in the current health crisis, who's doing well and who's doing not. It's interesting comparing, say, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, how she's responded to this crisis, with leaders elsewhere in the world. I'm sure you can fill in the gaps on who might fit the bill there. So, Antigone then buries the body ceremonially by sprinkling dust over it. She's then arrested, accepts arrest, and then there's an electrifying scene between her and Creon. So Creon's accused her, and she said, yes, it was me. And Antigone says, no matter, death longs for the same rights for all. Creon says, never the same for the patriot and the traitor. Antigone, who, Creon, who on earth can say the ones below don't find this pure and uncorrupt? Creon says, never. Once an enemy, never a friend, not even after death. Antigone says, I was born to join in love, not hate. And Creon replies to her, go down below and love, if love you must. Love the dead. While I'm alive, no woman is going to lord it over me. So, although that's the 5th century BC, gender issues are very much key to this whole story. Now, we could talk for some time about what happens in the second part of the play and what happens with Haemon and with Ismene, who's Antigone's sister. There's a pretty high body count at the end of the play. Haemon at one point says to his father, you would be a fine king of a desert island. And Creon, at the end of the play, is left alone and distraught. It's been a controversial play for many, many centuries. It's been banned from time to time. It was banned from being performed in Soweto during the apartheid years because it questioned the right of the state to impose unjust and immoral laws. It was banned in Greece under the fascist colonel's regime in the 1960s and 70s. Ironic, given that that's where its home was. But it's very much challenging to us today. What does it say? It questions what the nature of leadership is. It questions how much recognition we should give to gender, should that dominate our thinking. It compels us to think about whether, if ever, it's right to disobey the law. But ultimately, I think what we should be thinking about from Antigone is that drama and plays like this allow us to think aloud about society's issues and problems.